Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir, and on today's show, we have two main things to talk about. Number one is price action on Palantir, $29. First time we've seen $29 since September 2021, which is in line with the theme that we had last week, which is the first time we saw $28 and $27 was since 2021. 27 we hit briefly in March, but really the first time we sustained that level was since 2021, and then same thing with 28. Today, we hit $29.39 at the top, and we ended around $28.70. So we're going to talk about price action. Number two, we got to talk about Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate that was announced 2 hours ago. I'm going to be doing a lot more in-depth analysis about what that vice presidential candidate means for Palantir, because it does mean something for Palantir, but today's analysis is going to be a top sort of high-level deep dive in terms of why he's important, why I'm even bringing it up, why it matters for you if you're a Palantir investor, and ultimately what that might mean if Trump ends up becoming the next president of the United States, given his VP is someone that knows Palantir very well. Let's get into it. Okay, before we start off, just want to say I unequivocally condemn the acts of violence, the assassination attempt we had on the president on Saturday. I would love to know where you guys were when you saw that, when you saw everything break out. But I just came back from taking a walk outside, and I walked into the house, and I think my sister had YouTube open, and I saw one of the headlines, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then I started getting the coverage as everyone else did. So sad day for American history. There was a graphic that I shared on the Market Open today where I went more in depth about my thoughts, but millimeters were the difference between that being a headshot and us seeing the president of the United States get assassinated on TV. It would have been such a violent video. I'm sure TV stations wouldn't even be able to show it. It would have been the defining political event of the century, and markets probably would have tanked 5 to 10% off the idea that we just had an assassination of a presidential candidate. So it was pretty tough to see. Thankfully, Donald Trump has not been injured badly to the point where anything was fatal. And yeah, from my perspective, in America, we have to be able to fight ideas through political discourse. I may say things you may disagree with. You may say things I disagree with. At the end of the day, we have to be able to have discussions over that. If we resort to violence to resolve those issues, we become no better than a lot of the other countries in the world that have used that violence to dictate their entire governments and policies. And in America, we have this experiment called democracy. We got to keep letting that experiment do its thing. So very sad day for America. Happy the president is safe. Also, I'm going to put a GoFundMe in the chat, in the description of someone who ended up passing away. His name was Corey, who was just a political a guy who supported Trump, and he just wanted to, like, you know, be at a Trump rally. He ended up catching a stray bullet. So he had a wife, he had a daughter. Very, very sad stuff to see. I'll put his GoFundMe in the description. It's the official Trump president GoFundMe fundraiser that they're doing. So if anyone wants to donate, you guys can do that in the chat. So pretty rough day for America. One of those events that lets you remember that, hey, at the end of the day, we all are people, and we cannot resolve our differences via violence. That's just not going to allow America to continue being America. And we've got to find a way. We've got to find a way to be able to just talk to each other. So my heart goes out to the victims, and I guess we have to move forward, hopefully, in a way that doesn't involve future violence. Okay, price action. So one thing I have to say on price action for Palantir, it's not a ton of analysis today. Just want to show the chart right here, 28.77. So on the day, we hit 29.30. And so that 29.30 was nice to see. We started at 27.90, gapped up to 29.30, then came back down. We stayed above 29 for a good couple hours. We actually did stay there. But then, unfortunately, you know, we fell to 28.76. Now, when I say unfortunately, I'm saying it as someone who's very privileged because Palantir is up a lot year to date. I don't have the right to say, well, unfortunately, we fell. It's like, yeah, it would have been nice to hold 29, but it is very okay to close at $28.70 for Palantir. And it's nice to see that Palantir is really maintaining this price action at the elevated levels of 27, 28, 29, potentially setting up a Q2 earnings where we are able to get above that $30 range. Now, two quick things on the price action. Number one, we do have an earnings confirmation August 5th. So I'll be live after hours on August 5th. And I'll be here. You guys know where to find me. And we'll be discussing Palantir's results on August 5th. I believe that is a Monday, if I'm not wrong. I'm pretty sure that's a Monday. That is a Monday. Monday, August 5th. We'll get into Palantir earnings. Now, number two, which I want to bring up, is Dan Ives' latest piece on not Palantir, but on AI in general. So shout out to Andy. He tagged me in this press release by Wedbush. Now, this is the most important sentence from the PR or from the note that Wedbush put out. Our myriad of field checks globally over the past month give us a high level of confidence that the AI revolution monetization has now begun to hit its next gear of growth as the baton has been handed from semis to the software phase, with use cases exploding across the board. That sentence right there might be the reason for why Palantir even hit $29 today. What I mean by that is that someone like Dan Ives, who has access to a lot of institutional investors that have lots of money, along with other AI analysts that may be in his same vicinity, potentially could be telling their clients the same thing that Dan Ives just put out in a note today to his clients, which is that we believe, given our checks, and by the way, Dan Ives' checks on Apple have been pretty spot on this whole year. While everyone hated Apple at 160, 170, he was saying, no, China's good, India's good, shipments, upgrade, AI cycle. He got the entire kind of narrative right in Apple. As we can see, has had a good year, up 20%. If Dan Ives is thinking that the monetization of AI, which is the big question, right? Like, we're building all these data centers, GPUs, what are the use cases, which then translates into monetization? If he thinks it's begun and it's started, then there is a world in which the street, which I have argued over the past couple weeks, and I could be wrong on this, but I've argued, I think the rally we're seeing, just given the pure strength of the closes every day and how the red candles, they get eaten up very quickly, I feel like that's institutional. His argument might, right here in the note today, is kind of supporting that argument, that maybe the institutions are reading from people like Dan Ives that AI is now translating to software applications versus just semis and hardware. And it's not like semis or hardware are going to do bad. It's just they've already had a pretty damn good run, right? A lot of growth has been priced in. But for software, maybe that growth has not been priced in, and maybe that growth really hasn't started, particularly the monetization of that growth. Why has Palantir been green on many days when other SaaS names have been red? Maybe it's because the street is thinking that people like Dan Ives are actually right when they say that the AI use cases are exploding and the monetization of those AI use cases, in the context of Palantir, monetizing AIP, has started. And the street is pricing in that growth, and therefore they're buying the stock. Now, I don't know if Q2 is when that growth actually materializes. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe Q3, Q4 is when AIP monetization really starts to begin. But if it does start in Q2 and Palantir raises guidance, and the raising of the guidance is basically going to make it obvious if the AIP monetization has started, then there is a solid argument that we not only maintain this multiple, but we expand the multiple, and the 30s are potentially around, on the horizon. So maybe the transition from hardware AI to software AI is what starts to happen. And if that is what starts to happen, and Palantir can show that, like, the beginnings of that are happening. Someone in my chat in the morning open said, what if Palantir puts up a $700 million quarter? The street's expecting 650. If they beat by 50 million, it's going to be exciting. Now, I don't expect them to do that. I think it's going to take some time to get there. If they do it, I would be very happy. I think it just might take some time, because if you put up a $700 million quarter in Q2, you don't want to put up a, less than $700 million quarter in Q3, right? You want to keep the growth happening, and maybe they just don't have that much baked in yet to show it in Q2. But the point is, if Palantir can show the growth and show the beginning of the monetization, this multiple starts to get justified. Multiple expansion starts to get justified. If they don't put up that growth, then we either take a little bit of a dip, 10, 20, 30%, which at this point would put us in 24, 25, which is not horrible. Before a 10, 20, 30% dip would put us almost below $20. So it would just be a new base that is formed based on the rating of the stock. But if Palantir crushes this quarter, I think the street is buying the stock in expectation of the crush for that quarter and a guidance raise. If they don't do it, they don't do it. If they do it, then Dan Ives' internal checks on AIP monetization and the use cases of AI starting to get monetized might translate into investors wanting exposure to Palantir, even if they don't beat in like a really decisive way. But Carp on the call says AIP's monetization is starting. Then investors are going to say, all right, so AI growth, like real software AI growth, the trillions of dollars of opportunity enterprise should start to get unlocked via Palantir. We're going to buy some stock and get exposure. We'll see what happens. But that note by Dan Ives maybe is the reason why we're seeing it surge from 27, 28, 29, because the institutions are getting ready to get exposure to the software applications of AI. All right, so let's get into Trump and JD Vance. Now, someone is going to win the presidency. Either it's going to be Biden and Harris, or it's going to be Trump and Vance. Palantir is going to exist regardless of Biden, Harris, Trump, Vance. However, I think it is a bit naive to assume that the administration does not at least somewhat influence the trajectory of not just Palantir as a business, but every single business in the United States. If you're a oil and gas company and Trump wants to drill more, you potentially might do better. If you are a tech company and Trump wants to get rid of Section 230, that could potentially affect you because that has to do with free speech and censorship. If you are a real estate company and Biden, who today I believe is proposing a national cap on rents of 5%, that potentially could affect you as well, right? So the point is policies affect companies. Palantir is no different from being affected by the political atmosphere. Now, Palantir, and in the words of Karp, they've CAGR'd about 30% over the past 15 years in their government business because no matter what administration it was, they've been able to find a way to grow. That is very good for Palantir, and that's because their product and their software is so important. However, there is definitely a link between JD Vance and Palantir if you dive deep into what the connection is, and that connection can help Palantir. And I'm going to talk about why that connection can help Palantir because of the very intimate relationship one of Palantir's co-founders has, which is Peter Thiel, with JD Vance. So I knew about JD Vance for a while now. I'm learning more about him. I'm researching about him, all that stuff. But I knew about who he was, and I knew like on in a bird's eye view, Peter Thiel supported him for his Senate run in Ohio. So like I knew there was a connection there. I didn't know how deep that connection went. This is something that I asked ChatGPT and verified on my own. By the way, ChatGPT truly becoming phenomenal in terms of just giving real-time information. What is JD Vance's connections to Palantir? So, Mithril Capital. This was Peter's VC fund. In 2016, Vance worked at Mithril Capital, which is a venture capital firm. Naraya Capital, Naraya and Mithril, both objects in the Lord of the Rings, so there's a common connection there in terms of how he named his own VC fund, and obviously Palantir being one of the objects in Lord of the Rings. JD Vance co-founded Naraya Capital, a VC fund. While there is no direct public record of Naraya investing in Palantir, the firm operates in the tech investment space, which includes companies similar to Palantir. They raised $93 million, and I'm not sure exactly how much of that Peter Thiel contributed. Obviously, it wasn't the entire full amount, but Peter Thiel was a significant contributor to Naraya Capital, along with Eric Weinstein. So you got JD Vance, who's, again, running for VP of the United States of America with Donald Trump, who worked at Mithril, which was Peter's VC fund. Then he started his own VC fund and had Peter back him. And then Peter ended up supporting his political career when he ran for office. Now, what's very important to understand about Naraya Capital is one of the companies they invested in. What is one of the companies they invested in? It was a company called Chapter. Now, some of you guys, if you're really OG on the channel, you know Chapter because I covered this like 2 years ago. A lot of you probably don't remember that video, but as soon as I saw this on their website, I realized, holy crap, I know this company. Medical advisory firm Chapter scores $42 million in latest funding round for their Series B. So just keep in mind, Naraya participated in this funding round, which was JD Vance's VC fund. So they participated in the round, 2022. Peter Thiel joined Chapter's board of directors, and then Chapter ended up using Palantir to build their proprietary platform. From a press release, the company strives to ensure its work is genuine and ethical. Chapter also partners with Palantir on its tech platform, which integrates the data on all Medicare plans and allows its advisors to make the most informed recommendations, which means the proprietary medical advisory platform that Chapter has built, that's why they got $42 million in funding, because they're a tech company that builds medical advisory plans, is integrated on top of Palantir. Now, why does this matter? At its core, JD obviously has to know about Palantir. He cannot be oblivious to Palantir based on how I'm looking at the situation for two reasons. Number one, if the guy funding your firm co-founded the company, i.e. Peter Thiel giving you all the money to start your VC fund, you would probably want to know, hey, like what is Peter doing with Palantir? Like I'm kind of curious, what is Peter working on the weekends? Like what is Peter doing with Palantir? So I'm imagining he probably researched and knows Palantir very in depth, probably has had many conversations with Peter about the value proposition of Palantir. Number two, a startup that your firm is funding, aka Chapter, is using Palantir. You cannot fund them unless you understand why and how they're using Palantir. It's not like, oh, they're using AWS for their storage or GCP. Palantir is an entire data analytics platform that is creating the proprietary technology that that Chapter is using. So no sophisticated venture capitalist would invest in a $42 million funding round without understanding the internal tech around how a startup is building their proprietary platform, which obviously means JD, I believe, again, this is my hypothesis based on breaking it all down, and you can agree or disagree with me in the comments. I think he understands the value of Palantir. So him being in the White House as VP potentially could be a catalyst for the company, Palantir, as Peter Thiel will have direct access via a literal phone call to his old pal, the vice president. I think this VP story is just getting started. And personally, I think that one of the reasons why Peter has been a bit more reclusive from politics and not cared as much about politics is because he already knew that JD Vance was going to be in the White House. I mean, think about it like this. Let's say there is a certain policy that, or a certain bill that might get passed, which would have implications for Palantir, or a certain contract that's up for bid that if, you nudge the right guy, it would have implications for Palantir. The guy who funded your VC fund all those years ago, who funded your pursuit of being a senator from the great state of Ohio, which is another reason I think Trump picked JD Vance, because Ohio is a swing state, and now this kind of probably legitimizes that they're going to win Ohio. That guy, when he calls, you answer. It's just that simple. I've been lucky enough over the past 6 months to get in contact with some people who are much more successful with me. And the number one thing they have told me, which is why when they call, I try to answer no matter what I'm doing. Even if it's inconvenient for me, I try to pick up that damn phone call. It is about who you know, not what you know. And I think everyone who is slightly above their 30s in this audience, even if you're in your mid 20s, you probably know that life is about who you know, not what you know. Now, you've got to know something about the world to be able to offer value, but if you don't know someone that can help you connect what you know to the broader public, the masses, to get contracts, get certain, get into Harvard Law School. I mean, there's so many different ways, dude, where I learned at a young age connections really matter. And as I get older, I continuously learn from mentors that I have that are much more successful than me, that connections are what matters. So I believe Peter Thiel calling JD Vance, even though he's the VP, he's going to do what he has to do to pick up that phone call. And when he picks up that phone call, the question is going to be, does he have any influence on Palantir getting more contracts? Not just because he wants to give the contracts because Peter Thiel is buddy. I'm sure that has a little bit of influence there. But more importantly, because he understands the technology, I'm guessing. And if he understands the technology, he understands the value of the company, he understands the potential of the company, then Karp just got a friend, potentially, who's VP, Vice President of the United States of America, who, when Trump's trying to figure out how to fix how the Fed looks at data, well, even Jerome Powell today said for the past couple of years, they've been working with big data to try to get a better understanding of inflation. This is a problem that uniquely, I think, could be solved with something like Foundry, because it's all about integrating real-time data, making sense of that data, and then making sure the data integration pipelines actually are governed and securitized in the correct way, but also create value for the enterprise. In this case, the enterprise would be the Federal Reserve of the United States. So, I mean, you got the chair of the Fed saying, hey, we're trying to implement big data into understanding all of our data that goes into figuring out what we do with monetary policy, right? Raise or lower interest rates. And potentially, you got JD Vance, who walks into the White House, who says, why are we using these legacy platforms? Why don't we just, get a company, pay them $200 million over 5 years and have them build it out? In that moment, I think the company that pops into his head potentially is Palantir. Not only because he knows the technology is advanced and that it could work, but also because he's worked with the company. He understands the company. He's funded startups that also built their tech on Palantir. I think there is a world in which, if he becomes the vice president, that has a direct influence / indirect influence on Palantir's business interests. I think Palantir will thrive in whatever administration that exists. But you can't tell me that there's not potentially a way that JD Vance and Peter Thiel, knowing JD Vance, and JD Vance gets a lot of power by becoming the VP, has a level of influence in the White House that potentially leads to more benefits for Palantir. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the chat, but I think there is an argument there, and I think that argument deserves to be explored at least. I'm still learning about JD Vance. I don't know exactly who he is, what he stands for, all that stuff. I know at one point he was not a fan of Trump, and now he is a fan of Trump. He was a poor guy. He came from Ohio, the Rust Belt of Ohio, ended up working his ass off to graduate Yale Law School. So he is one of those people that was not born into elite privilege. He was working class, poor, worked really hard, then got into the tech sector. He understands technology. He was a venture capitalist. So having someone like that in the White House potentially is good for technology and obviously could be good for Palantir given the relationship that they have with Peter Thiel. Final thing I'll say on this, for anyone who feels like scummy or like unethical because of this, I think it goes back to it's about who you know, not what you know. At the end of the day, life is about connections. And every single tech company, especially the big ones, they spend a lot of money on lobbying. Google, Amazon, Microsoft. You don't think Amazon has a bunch of people trying to talk to Lena Khan to make sure she like settles down? Like, I mean, like she's the chair of the FTC. Like, there are so many ways that companies influence politics to be able to get their desired outcome. You as an investor just need to make sure that your company is doing what they need to do to advance their agenda, because your capital is at risk at that company if their agenda is not achieved. So this is how the world works. And I'm talking about it on companies as a macro landscape, on a micro landscape, right? The relationships that you have in your own life. Like, I'm sure people who have who have jobs at corporate offices, I'm sure there's internal corporate bureaucracy, and you kind of don't step on that person's toe, or you don't leave a passive aggressive email to that person because that could affect your relationship with that person. Like, life is all about relationships. And at the end of the day, if Palantir, who's hitting its prime, gets 4 years of a VP that deeply understands Palantir and has direct contacts to the co-founder of Palantir because that guy supported him for the past 10 years, maybe that's beneficial for the company. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that is, that's the analysis that I'm coming with right now. And as I do more research, we'll probably go deeper into how this whole thing plays out. All right, that's it for me. Thank you everybody for listening and watching. I know this was a long one. Hopefully this gave some value. DailyPalantir.substack.com, free email newsletter. You guys can check it out. And thank you for listening. We'll keep going from there. Thank you, everybody. See you on the next one.